dead meme.
All right, 7 Days to Die. Should you play it in 2022? So that's the question I'd like to try to answer with you. So we'll basically look at the presentation, the gameplay, um, where it's stating in development, because it is a game in alpha, so we would keep that in mind. But let's jump into it. We're going to ask, should you play or buy 7 Days to Die? All right, 7 Days has gone through many iterations. It's been in, up to Alpha 20 now. As we can see on the left here, this is what we kind of saw in the beginning. And as time progressed, we moved on to this one. But it's still, even the models are still being worked on today. So we're still kind of looking at the early teens models. And as you can see, they've even been updating since then. But this is a little bit closer to what things look like now. Many of the zombies have a significantly better model, right? Like this has got a lot more detail. This is like the old nurse, and this is the new nurse. So the amount of detail that's been added to the zombies and the environment alone has been incredible. And as you can see, like this is significantly better than their earliest works. Even the animals have been improved, and the props around the world. So let's take a look at some of those. So this would be the environment that you're going to spend a lot of time in. Like you're going to be in maybe the small towns or the cities. This is where the majority of the loot is for scavenging and whatnot, and where the missions are going to take you. And so as you can see, the presentation is pretty decent. It's not like it's nothing like a photorealistic by any means, but there's a reason for that. We're going to cover it a little bit later. So the cities are relatively well presented. There's a handful of things that don't look super pretty. Like if you see this is kind of ugly. I suspect over time this will be addressed, because as we've gone on, if you looked at the old houses, they were just these hideous little blocks. There's a great deal of props. A lot of this stuff can be looted as well throughout the missions. And as you can see, we're waking up the natives. And the zombies are hidden in amongst the props. And here's a few of them. We see them in action, moving around. But their animations are pretty cool. So let's try to knock them down a bit. And you can hit them in the legs with better weapons, and they'll flop over. And as you can see, like people attempted to survive the apocalypse. They boarded up their doors and windows, but, you know, someone made a mistake and left the door open. All right, so we've turned off fly mode so we could walk through. This is kind of like they refer to them as a POI, or a point of interest. And so someone has kind of taken up residence in here, and they're growing various plants. That's something you could do as well. And as you can see, the props are relatively well done. The detail's decent. As time goes on, like this looks pretty ugly, but I suspect in the future it'll be updated, because, you know, it's being an alpha. And speaking from experience, the early alpha, the models were hideous, and they're just improving it slowly over time. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what you could expect while playing. Like the tree bark is okay. You know, it's not photorealistic by any means, but it's half decent. So I think we've covered presentation. I'm going to move on to some of the gameplay. All right, so I need to get rid of myself out of the top corner there. I want to show you the crafting menu. If you hit tab, this is the window that pops up. So this is like your basics, your various materials that are available to craft. There's a search bar here. So example, I want to make some fiber pants. There we go. Of course, there's the various frame shapes. We'll look at that in a few moments. Things like ladders, as you go along, gets more and more complicated. They are narrowed down into groups because there are huge amounts of items. Like this is weapons that are visible at this point. Later on, when you have advanced crafting stations, this will be even larger. There's a clothing section, there's furniture. So there's a lot of customization available to you in this game, but we're going to move on. All right, so you'll be making yourself through the early gameplay. You'll eventually get to the point where you make a campfire. And of course, this campfire is going to do exactly what you would expect it to do. You're going to cook things on it. You may need to add certain things, such as a cook pot, to some of these stations in order to allow them to craft some of these various items, right? So let's throw in a piece of wood for the fuel. I'm going to ask it to make me a little bit of paint so I can show you the next step and how you can customize your base. All right, so another large portion of the gameplay is preparing this Horde Knight base, or basically a base overall, because you're going to need a place to store the materials that you use to, say, craft the more advanced tools. Like a forge will be required to make metal weapons and tools and so on, but we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Your base is going to start out with these wooden frames. You're just going to craft them in here, shaped frames. Put it in your active slot in your toolbar. If you hold down R, you can get the shape menu, and you can create, well, it's enormous. It's crazy how much you can actually do. As you can see, we have like a weird little, let's see, we can make like a nice little circle. There you go. And of course, there's a paintbrush. We can take a look at that as you can paint these if you don't like what they look like when you actually upgrade them. Right? See, that's not pretty, but it's not ugly. But if you don't like that, the paintbrush is available, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. And of course, with your paintbrush in hand, you can push R. It will basically give you a list of all the available things that you can make things look like. So if you like the look of, say, this brick, you can now paint the faces of whatever it was you built. And of course, it doesn't increase its strength by any means. You'll have to physically upgrade it with better materials. But you can make your items have a more customized look. And of course, you can do this with your storage boxes. If you've watched any of my Let's Plays, I prefer to see the iconography as opposed to having to read tiny text. But we'll move on. So you'll find traders throughout the world. There's typically a little faction associated with them. Not completely implemented yet, but White River is one of the factions that you can become allied with. I believe it's Alpha 21 is where that is expected. But of course, this is the traders POI. They typically live in like a little trailer in like a small fortified area. One of the various traders that you can interact with. So you can buy some stuff from him with Dukes, which is the currency you can get by... you could trade materials to him. You can do these jobs as well. So there's a mission to dig up treasure. You can fetch like a satchel from a POI. There's even clear zombies, which is the one I see more typically. But you'll return to him and you'll build up reputation, and that will allow you to more easily buy things, let you do more missions. And the other thing to note, so this game's namesake, 7 Days to Die, they're calling it that for a reason. Every 7 days, the primary loop or reason to bother doing any of this is to prepare for what's referred to as Horde Night, where a great deal number of zombies show up and they're in like a hunting state. They already know where you are. You're unable to really stealth or hide from them because they're going to track you down. So you can kind of cheese them out. You can hide on top of roofs and stuff and make it much more difficult. Your first few blood moons, you could probably get away with that. You could even probably hide on one of these POIs that you're not going to use or live in or anything like that. And you would be able to fight them off from there. Alright, so combat. You're going to come across zombies. It's basically, there's no real way around it. They're not super dangerous out like this. So, as you can see, they're not horribly difficult to dispatch. But if this thing got close to you at this point, it would probably shred you pretty hard. So that's why I'm showing you the bow. We'll jump in there and do some melee. Like, melee's not unviable, it's just later on, it's a lot easier. And as you can see, I immediately got a concussion. It's like one hit. The beginning of this game, I don't recommend melee combat. Avoid it as much as you can. So that actually leads perfectly into the next segment we may want to cover. You can get various status ailments, which I guess they're not showing because I have God mode on, which is unfortunate. Basically, you could break arms and limbs, and you require the correct medical treatment in order to recover quickly. If you have a sprained bone, or not sprained, like a sprained ankle or whichever, and you continue to exert it, you will gain additional debuffs to the point where you may even break the limb and lose a great deal of health, like not forever, but basically your maximum health for a period of time will be reduced. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, items have a durability rating. So let's take a look at this axe. It's almost destroyed. I'm unable to repair it because I don't have a small stone. As your tools get more advanced, you're going to require way better components in order to repair them. So I believe this kind of displays the gameplay loop. You'll collect simple items, you'll be able to enter these POIs and collect better things, such as real tools. Sometimes weapons will be hidden in gun safes and so on. And the trader will also reward you with various materials or equipment and money, so you could buy something that's more effective. The final goal of all of that is to build some sort of fortification to hide at Horde Night. And also, it's nice to have a place to hide at nighttime, because the zombies seem okay right now, but once night falls, they really move. Like, they run, and it's tough to outrun them. And basically, when you're running, you're going to make all this noise and you're going to draw more. So that's another thing to consider. When you're in your base, you may not want to fire off rounds very often because you'll attract more zombies. And there are certain zombies that attract even more zombies. And there are various other power-ups. I don't want to spoil too much for you because it is interesting if you haven't dealt with it before. But there are more than just your typical shambler roaming around. So in your base, you may want to have a policy of, spike traps, like passive defense, and the bow and arrow. If you're not into that and you want to put down shotgun turrets and things like that, which isn't an option, go for it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But it's just basically one of the things you're going to have to contend with. Okay, so we've jumped into my mine and my friend's multiplayer server. And so we'll take a look here. As you can see, I have various pieces of equipment in the slots. We have the various crafting benches that you'll get as you progress through the game, right? And you build up your levels. So of course, as you kill all these zombies, you're slowly going to gain experience points. And you're going to be able to spend them under this button here. So I wouldn't call these classes by any means, but they're families of skills. So families of skills regarding strength. So basically, like, the stronger you are, wearing heavy armor is easier. You can carry more stuff. For some reason, cooking is included in strength, but go figure. There's fortitude, which are like survival perks. So things like hunting skills, being well insulated, protecting you from the weather and things like that, because that becomes an issue eventually. And there's agility, which is more of a stealthy build, or maybe you would consider them the talents of the rogue, like hidden strike and parkour, light armor, using smaller firearms. And of course, there's intellect. The ability to build a lot of these crafting stations comes from the intellect tree. It also allows you to manipulate electricity to make better traps that go from, say, your passive spike to a whirling blade trap and significantly more dangerous. Of course, a high intellect will also allow you to build mini bikes, motorcycles, and bicycles. Like basically the vehicles of the game. In order to build them, intellect's the way to go. So there is one challenge regarding this system. It is tough to be a jack of all trades, because as you level, of course, and you're spending these points, the enemies are only getting stronger as time progresses, and as you develop, the world around you becomes more dangerous. Being a jack of all trades is very tough to actually survive. So I don't recommend playing by yourself, but that's a conversation for a little bit later in the video. It's definitely more fun with your friends. I don't enjoy playing this alone. But let's look at the crafting stations at a more advanced level. The thing I like about the forge, the best part of this item, is it has all of the inventory or components it requires to do its job are in the forge. If I want to make, if I want to make nails, the clay and the iron are already in there. How did I do that? Let's grab some out of a box. So we can melt down sand for glass. That's a good example. We will also maybe throw in one of these radiators for brass. So brass is a key component required for bullets. You'll melt down brass radiators, and after 1:60, it'll be added to the inventory. As well, the sand. We need sand in order to produce glass jars to hold water. So every couple of seconds, the sand's going to pop up. So let's take a look. Glass jar. Maybe I'll have to go jar. Empty water jar. So we've melted down clay, we've melted down sand. It's all in the system already. I can just ask it to make it. Off it goes. The inventory is self-contained. It doesn't need me to search through a great deal number of boxes in order to craft something. So in contrast, in order to, say, make this arrow arrest mod, I'll look it up. Arrow arrest mod. I'm going to have to look through all of the boxes and materials and things I've scavenged in order to make this and come to this crafting table and ask it to craft. Now that doesn't sound that bad, but I would like you to kind of look at like the amount of different items that are in like this box alone. And in this box, like we have pieces of metal, there's feathers, there's nails, there's a million little components. And I think that this is incredibly unnecessary. I think that this could be simplified down into like, you know, in this one, you melt down the metal and you ask for the water jar, or you ask for nails, and you can just kind of unload them. So rather than going through this method of seeking out all of these components and filling up huge numbers of boxes with stuff in order to manage, I think you could put this in add an inventory to this crafting station and put in salvage components like mechanical components, weapon components, put them in the box. All right, so I've jumped on the motorbike in order to kind of give you an idea of the next thing I want to talk about. There is a general level of jank in this game. Like it's not the end of the world. It's not totally game breaking, but for some people, this level of jank, like if we show you, like that is a little strange. There are lots of little things like that where it just behaves in a very strange fashion. And that'll take some people out of the game, right? So it really depends on whether or not you're comfortable handling this level of jank. It is an alpha, keep in mind. You may have also noticed I had a bit of a chop there. This game has some optimization issues. There are a great deal of POIs just down the street from where we're camped out here that have a lot of like underground bunkers, and there's even a pretty big tower over in this direction, and the game runs horribly. Like I have a friend running a one of those Titan cards. He's got like twice as much RAM in his video card as I do in my entire computer, and he still chops out. So there are some performance issues that need to be addressed still. For the most part, it's in isolated areas. I don't think you're going to experience it too often. But of course, for some people, that is definitely a deal breaker. So I think we'll talk about the final bits, the things that, whether or not I would recommend the game. So it is an alpha. So a lot of what we're seeing here will probably change for the better, judging by the developer's track record. As like the graphics, as I showed you in the beginning, the zombies look hideous. They slowly improved till they got to something significantly more interesting to look at. The animations have improved. I can remember a time when deers looked like someone would stop animating them. They were so janky looking. It was hysterical. The props and the POIs as well have improved over time. They look significantly better. The customization of the world, if you love building things, I think this is going to blow you away. The level of customization, what I've seen my friends build and other people on servers, it's unbelievable. So with the presentation out of the way, I would say the gameplay is for the most part fun. It does get rather repetitive because the major drive, I would say, or the major gameplay loop is to collect enough items to survive the Blood Moon. So you'll need to basically run around the world and enter all of these POIs, collect their components, take things apart like air conditioners and things to get the technology components that you can't reproduce, and you'll build traps such as shotgun turrets, blade traps, and even passive traps such as like spikes and barbed wire, and that will give you the opportunity to fight back against the Horde on Horde Night. And of course, there's the trader gameplay where they send you on those missions to scavenge typically homes and businesses throughout the world, and these POIs will slowly restock, and you'll be able to scavenge them again depending on your game settings. And you'll be able to also buy materials from these traders. They'll send you on missions to meet other traders to kind of keep the loop running. So, but I do recommend not playing by yourself. I have not enjoyed this game too much alone. It was a novelty the first time I played through. So, because I hadn't seen many games like this, and I enjoy the sandbox genre. So, running around and scavenging and dealing with the zombies, it was novel the first time I went through. I've never been able to play it alone a second time for any reasonable amount of time. Especially with this skill system, how much more in-depth it has become. It is significantly more difficult to be a master of all trades and survive and to have a good experience. Like, for example, to build the motorcycle, you need to be really deep into intellect in order to make some of these things. Like Grease Monkey requires you to be at least a motorcycle manic. You'll need to probably be 5 levels in to unlock this. And you do that, but every level you gain, you can allocate on your own. It's up to you. So I do not recommend playing this by yourself. One other obnoxious thing is the load times. Single player is not as bad, but connecting to servers, it's brutal, especially the first time. But if you can get past that, I think you'll enjoy it. If you enjoy the loop of like building up for the confrontation, not a boss, but a confrontation of this horde that will annihilate your base if you don't protect it. If you like the scavenging and the sneaking and in the post-apocalyptic environment, I think you would like it. If you're not really into zombie games, and if you're not really into kind of exploring and building, I would not recommend this game. It's definitely not for you. If you're not into dealing with janky like motorbikes and just little things like that, there are still little bugs in the game that you'll encounter. Like there's a trapdoor bug, which is very humorous, but annoying when it happens to you. So just keep in mind, if you're unwilling to deal with the jankiness, I would recommend waiting. I do believe they will address it. The world is a little bit barren. There is like 1 or 2 NPCs, which are traders. The world does not feel very interesting beyond the encounters in the POIs. So like there are no human factions at this time, which is disappointing because they would add a great deal of interest, like fighting enemies that wield firearms, you know. That would be a little bit more exciting than just hiding behind a wall in a kill box, shooting a bunch of zombies. But I do think that is everything that's really worth saying. If you like sandbox games, if you're into survival mechanics because you got to eat and drink, if you're into building bases and slowly developing your power, I think you'll like the game. If those things don't interest you, stay away. If you want to play a zombie game, there's probably something more suited for you. Say like the COD zombies may be more up your alley, or State of Decay may be more up your alley, or Back 4 Blood, right? So, because crafting and base building and scavenging is an enormous part of this game, and if you don't want to do those things, stay away. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful, and talk to you later.